"Can I sleep in your car?" The female CEO whispered, the single dad mechanic froze in shock. Rain poured steadily over the sleepy town of Brookhaven, Utah, its narrow streets slick and gleaming under flickering street lamps. Behind a small, dimly lit auto garage, Jace Rowan locked up for the night, the sleeves of his flannel shirt rolled up, exposing forearms smudged with grease. The distant rumble of thunder echoed against the mountains, and his breath came out in faint puffs in the cool night air. "Toby, inside now, buddy," Jace called out, tossing a tarp over an engine block and wiping his hands on a rag. His 5-year-old son was bouncing around the puddles, his little boots splashing like it was the best part of his day. "But Daddy, someone's in the truck." Toby's voice suddenly dropped, more curious than scared, as he pointed toward the old Ford pickup parked near the far corner of the lot. Jace frowned. No one should have been anywhere near his truck, especially not at this hour. He walked quickly across the gravel, flashlight in hand, while Toby trailed closely behind. As Jace approached the passenger side, he saw a pale face ducking low behind the dashboard, blonde hair plastered to flushed cheeks, her breath fogging up the glass. He knocked gently. The door creaked open just an inch, and a trembling voice spilled into the rain-soaked air. Can I sleep in your car? Just tonight, please." She looked up. Her eyes were wide, rimmed red from crying, or maybe the cold. Her tailored blazer was streaked with mud, soaked through at the shoulders. Dirt clung to the hem of her expensive-looking trousers, and her heels were caked in something that looked like dried clay. Her hands clutched the seatbelt strap like a lifeline, shaking visibly. Before Jace could find words, Toby stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Daddy, she's scared." Jace's heart skipped. He looked back at the woman. She didn't move, didn't blink. She just watched him with that same desperate, glassy-eyed expression. Her chest rose and fell quickly, like she had been running. Then he noticed something else. Far beyond the lot, just at the edge of the alley, headlights flickered. A sleek black SUV idled, barely visible through the rain, 3 silhouettes inside. The windows were tinted, but the way the men sat stiffly, scanning the area, told Jace this wasn't some lost family looking for directions. Something was off. He turned sharply. "Toby," Jace said low, kneeling down. "Remember the old hose trick?" Toby's eyes lit up with mischievous recognition. "Operation Flood? That's the one." Within seconds, Toby ran to the side of the garage, yanking on a rusted spigot. Water sprayed in a wild arc across the lot. A nearby hose disconnected completely, creating a small commotion. Jace used the moment to casually walk back inside the garage, flipping a hidden switch beneath the tool rack. Outside, an old alarm system blared a high-pitched screech, echoing into the night like a car theft gone wrong. Back in the lot, the black SUV hesitated, then peeled away, tires crunching through wet gravel. The noise settled. The lights disappeared down the road. Jace let out a long breath and turned back toward the truck. The woman hadn't moved, but her face was streaked now with tears, blending into the rainwater trailing down her cheeks. "All right," he said quietly, pulling open the door. "You're coming inside. You're freezing." She didn't argue. She slid out slowly, wobbling slightly in her heels before Jace caught her elbow. "Careful." As remand. The woman looked down at her feet, ashamed. Inside the garage, Jace draped a dry shop blanket over her shoulders. Toby handed her a cup of warm cocoa from the tiny break room kettle, his little hand holding the cup with serious concentration. She held it like it was made of gold. "I'm Jace. That's my boy, Toby." She hesitated, fingers tightening on the cup. "Camilla," she said, finally, voice hoarse. "Camilla Hartley." The name meant nothing to Toby, but it hit Jace like a freight train. Hartley, biotech. He'd heard it before, in the news. Scandals, stocks, boardroom drama. He stared at her muddy heels and designer coat, her perfect hair, now tangled and soaked, the haunted look in her eyes. This wasn't just some lost traveler. But he didn't ask anything more. Instead, he looked at Toby, who had already curled up on the workbench with a pillow, sketching trucks in his notebook, and then at the woman in front of him. "You're safe here," he said simply. Camilla's eyes filled again, and she gave a shaky nod. Outside, the rain fell harder, but inside that little garage, under the buzz of flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of engine oil and cocoa, something warm had already begun to settle. The smell of freshly brewed coffee drifted through the air, warm and rich, cutting through the early morning chill. Camilla stirred. She blinked against the soft light filtering through the cracked window blinds and realized she was lying on a worn couch, wrapped in a small fleece blanket covered in cartoon stars. A child's blanket. She looked down. There was a sticker stuck to her sleeve, a smiling monster truck. She exhaled slowly. It wasn't a hotel suite or a high-rise apartment. No designer sheets or city skyline. Just four walls and the faint hum of an old refrigerator. Safe. She sat up and caught her reflection in the dark screen of an old TV. Her hair was still damp from the night before, now a wild mess of curls. Mud streaked the cuffs of her tailored pants. Her once white blouse was now grayish at best. She looked nothing like a CEO. Voices floated from the adjoining room. "You're squishing the wheels again, Daddy." "I'm not squishing anything. I'm flipping eggs." Camilla rose quietly and peeked around the corner. The kitchen was small but alive. Jace stood at the stove, his flannel sleeves rolled up, working a skillet with focused ease. His dark hair was tousled, and his jaw had that rough edge from a missed shave. At the table, Toby was drawing with crayons, tongue poking out in concentration. Camilla stepped into the room. Jace glanced up and gave her a quiet nod. "Morning. Coffee's fresh." She opened her mouth to speak, then hesitated. A beat passed before she whispered, "Thanks. For everything." He didn't ask questions, didn't press her, just handed her a mug. She wrapped her fingers around it gratefully, the warmth sinking into her skin. Toby looked up, his eyes bright. "Hi. Did you sleep okay? That couch is squishy. I like it." Camilla smiled. It was perfect. "You want toast? Daddy makes it kinda crunchy." "Crunchy's fine," she said, sitting across from the little boy. He nodded seriously, then held up his drawing. "Look, I drew a monster truck, but now I'm drawing a new one." Jace set a plate in front of her, 2 fried eggs, toast, and a few apple slices. No garnish, no plating. But it smelled incredible. "You didn't have to," she started. "Eat," Jace interrupted gently. "You look like you haven't in a while." Camilla paused, then picked up the fork. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the quiet clink of silverware and the gentle scratching of Toby's crayon. Jace finally leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So, last night, you want to talk about it?" Camilla stared down at her plate. "I'm just dealing with a little mess. Needed to disappear for a while." Her voice was casual, too casual, the kind that comes from practiced lies. Jace didn't call her out. He just studied her for a moment, eyes calm, unreadable. "A little mess doesn't usually involve being chased by guys in black SUVs, he said evenly. She didn't answer. Toby looked up, oblivious to the tension. He slid his new drawing across the table. "This is you," he said, pointing to a figure with long yellow hair and a sparkly dress. "This is me. That's Daddy. We're having pancakes. You have magic hair." Camilla blinked. Then, unexpectedly, a soft laugh escaped her lips, not polished or practiced, but real. Her shoulders shook just slightly, her fingers curled around the paper. "I have magic hair?" she asked. Toby grinned. "Yep, it's shiny, like a superhero. You can be the lightning lady." Camilla looked at Jace. His eyes had softened. She cleared her throat, touched the edge of the paper. "It's been a while since someone drew me," she said, voice quieter now. I used to have a whole office of people who talked about me every day, but no one ever drew me with pancakes. Toby shrugged. You should stay for pancakes next time. Jace smiled faintly, pouring another cup of coffee. Camilla didn't say it aloud, but for the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt something that wasn't fear or pressure. She felt seen. The first morning turned into a second, then a third. By the end of the week, Camilla was still there. She didn't explain why, and Jace didn't ask. She slept on the couch, helped with breakfast, and slowly folded herself into the rhythm of the garage. It was odd, at first, watching a woman who probably once signed million-dollar contracts now crouch beside toolboxes, wiping grease off a clipboard or alphabetizing spare parts, but she did it with quiet focus. Not out of pride, out of need. And every evening, after they closed the shop, they shared dinner around the small kitchen table. Nothing fancy, sometimes just grilled cheese or soup from a can. But it felt real. On a Tuesday afternoon, Camilla stood under a lifted pickup truck, holding a wrench the wrong way. Wait, why isn't this twisting? She muttered, staring at the oil plug like it had personally betrayed her. Jace walked over, eyebrows raised. You're turning it the wrong direction. She looked up. Her face was streaked with sweat, and a black smear of oil ran across her cheekbone. She looked almost offended. No, I'm not. You are, he said gently, kneeling beside her. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. She blinked. That's a real thing? He grinned. Very real. She finally gave in, laughing at herself. This is humiliating. You'll live. She shoved his shoulder with her elbow. Says the man who thinks boiling water means cooking. That night, Jace attempted to make spaghetti. It ended with Camilla gently taking the pot from his hands, wrinkling her nose at the two soft noodles. Okay, step aside. Emergency intervention. Jace raised his hands. Chef Hartley, take the wheel. While Toby built a Lego tower at the kitchen table, Camilla moved around the cramped kitchen with practiced grace. It was the first time Jace realized just how comfortable she could look in a simple tank top and jeans. No boardroom heels, no tight bun, just barefoot and real. Dinner was late, but good. They ate by the window, the sky outside slowly shifting from orange to indigo. Toby fell asleep mid-sentence, leaning on his dad's arm. Jace carefully carried him to bed, leaving Camilla alone with the dishes. She was rinsing a plate when he came back. I'll dry, he offered, picking up a towel. Their hands brushed. She flinched just a little, and he looked up. Sorry, he said. She smiled faintly. You do that thing. What thing? That eye squint when you're uncomfortable. Her voice was teasing but soft. You squint a little, like you're trying to hide it. Jace scratched the back of his neck. Do not. You totally do. She bumped her hip against him. It's very endearing. He chuckled, cheeks reddening. Great. I've got to tell. Don't worry, she whispered. Your secret's safe. Later that night, she sat on the back porch, wrapped in one of Jace's flannel shirts. The stars were faint through the cloudy sky, but the air was cool and quiet. Jace came out with 2 mugs. I made tea, he said, placing one beside her. She looked up, surprised. You made tea? It's not poisoned, probably. She smiled, taking the cup. Their fingers didn't touch this time, but the silence between them wasn't awkward, it was calm. She sipped. Mint and honey. They didn't speak for a long time. The porch creaked as Jace sat beside her, a few inches away but close enough to share warmth. In the distance, a dog barked. A truck rumbled down the road. Life went on. Camilla held her mug close. You know, I used to fly from city to city, stay in penthouses, talk to investors who smiled with their mouths but not their eyes. And now you're elbow deep in axle grease, Jace said dryly. She laughed, but then sobered. No one ever made me tea. He turned to her. Their loss. She didn't respond, but her lips curled ever so slightly, and her shoulder stayed close to his for the rest of the night. It was a Wednesday when the knock came. Late morning. The sky was the color of wet cement. Jace had just finished replacing brake pads on a dusty old sedan when a shadow stretched across the garage floor. He looked up. A man stood at the entrance. Tall, sharp suit. Too clean for a place like this. Sorry, Jace said, wiping his hands on a rag. We're closed today. Inventory check. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Just looking for someone. Jace tensed. You lost? Maybe, the man replied casually. I was told a woman might have passed through here. Blonde, late 20s, traveling alone. Seen anyone like that? Jace didn't blink. Nope. The man's smile flickered. Strange. Word around is someone matching that description was spotted near this garage. Jace shrugged. You'd be surprised how many people pass through this town. Gas and go. Not many stay. The man leaned slightly closer. She's not dangerous, if that's what you're thinking. Just confused. Might need help. Jace stared him down. If she needs help, I'm sure she'll ask the right people. There was a pause. Then the man nodded, like he'd gotten all he needed. Thanks. Let me know if you see anything unusual. He left. The silence that followed felt like thunder. Inside the house, Camilla had been watching from behind the curtain. She didn't say anything as Jace came in and locked the door. He poured himself a glass of water. Friend of yours? Her hands were shaking. She sat down slowly at the kitchen table. For a moment, she looked like she might lie. Then she exhaled. His name is Mitchell Crane. He's head of security at Hartley Biotech. Jace raised an eyebrow. Hartley, as in? She met his gaze. As in my company. The words hung heavy in the air. I'm the CEO, she said, voice low. Or, I was. She didn't look like one now. Her ponytail was fraying. Her jeans had a tear on the knee, but something in her eyes, sharp, steady, told the truth. I uncovered a cover-up, she said. Clinical trial results were falsified. The board knew. They signed off anyway. Profits over patients. Jace leaned against the counter. I confronted them. I threatened to go public. The next morning, my apartment was broken into. My assistant vanished. My emails were wiped. I barely got out. She looked down at her trembling hands. I didn't know where else to go. I just drove until I couldn't anymore. Silence. Jace stepped forward, took the glass from her hands, refilled it, set it back down. Good, he said. She blinked. Good? He nodded. Means I didn't rescue the wrong person. She let out a laugh that was half sob. I thought you'd tell me to leave. I thought you made decent spaghetti. He replied, deadpan. She covered her face with her hands. When she looked up again, her eyes were red but dry. Toby shuffled into the room, still in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching a crayon drawing. I made this for you, he announced proudly, holding it up. Camilla blinked. For me? Toby nodded. You're like a superhero. The picture showed a blonde woman in a red cape, holding a golden shield. Her hair was sparkly, and she was standing in front of a garage, smiling. Across the top, in blocky kid handwriting, Super Lady. Camilla stared at it for a long moment. Then she smiled, really smiled, and reached out to hug the little boy. Thank you, she whispered. This might be the bravest I've ever looked. Toby beamed. Daddy says brave people don't always wear capes, but I think you should. Jace watched from the doorway, arms crossed, the smallest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The past hadn't caught up to them yet, but it was getting closer. The storm rolled in quietly at first, just a whisper of wind rattling the tin roof, but by late evening, thunder cracked over the valley, and rain fell in sheets. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and died. Toby gasped. "Power's out." Jace calmly lit a candle from the kitchen drawer while Camilla held the flashlight steady. The flickering light threw soft shadows along the walls, making everything seem cozier than frightening. "We'll be fine," Jace said, handing Toby the candle with a wink. "You know what this means?" Toby's eyes lit up. "Blanket fort, night." Within minutes, the living room transformed into a glowing cavern made of blankets, chairs, and pillows. Toby arranged everything with expert care: walls draped over chairs, a flashlight taped under the table as a ceiling light, and sleeping bags spread out in a lumpy circle. Camilla ducked inside, laughing softly as her head bumped a hanging blanket. Architecturally questionable, but magical. Toby handed her a stuffed dinosaur. "He guards the snacks." Jace crawled in last, carrying mugs of warm cocoa. Rain tapped on the roof like a lullaby. Thunder rumbled far off, softer now. They lay side by side, legs tangled, the only sound the occasional whisper of wind, and Toby narrating a made-up story involving flying trucks and marshmallow missiles. Eventually, the boy's voice faded. He curled against his father, fast asleep. The candlelight flickered low. Camilla shifted to face Jace. "This is cozy," she whispered. He smiled, adjusting the blanket over Toby's small body. Storms never bothered him. He just wants company. Camilla watched the little boy sleep for a moment before speaking again. "When I was his age, I didn't have blanket forts." Jace looked over, waiting. "My parents sent me to boarding school when I was 6, she said, voice quiet. "Said it was for the best. I learned how to fold socks and recite Latin before I learned how to braid my own hair." She hesitated. "I wasn't scared of the dark. I was scared of silence, of no one noticing if I disappeared." Jace didn't interrupt. "I used to hide in the laundry room just to hear the machines hum. It felt like someone breathing nearby, like I wasn't alone." She laughed softly, bitter and warm at once. "I grew up thinking love was earned through achievements, titles, performance reviews." Jace finally spoke. "And yet, you ran from all of that." She nodded slowly. "Because, for the first time in my life, I knew what it felt like to not be safe. Not just professionally, personally, and the only place I felt remotely human again was here." Silence stretched, not awkward but intimate. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. "That was too much." "It wasn't," Jace replied. "You're allowed to be tired. Even strong people get tired." Camilla smiled faintly. "You're too kind." He shook his head. "I'm just honest." She shifted again, this time closer. "What about you?" Jace looked at his sleeping son, then back at her. "My wife, Delia, was the brave one. She was a nurse. Quick laugh, sharp tongue, never backed down from anything." He paused. "We were driving home from her sister's wedding. Rain, just like tonight. A truck didn't stop." Camilla's eyes softened. "Toby was just a baby. I don't remember the crash, just the hospital, and then the quiet house." She reached over, instinctively, brushing her fingers against his hand. "I kept showing up for him," Jace said, nodding toward Toby. "That's how I survived. Routine, pancakes on Mondays, truck cartoons, every Sunday night." He picked up the small guitar lying beside him. "She used to sing. Toby still asks for lullabies." He played softly an old tune, simple chords. Camilla watched as his fingers moved gently across the strings, his voice low and steady. Toby stirred once but settled deeper into sleep. Camilla blinked back something behind her lashes. When the last note faded, Jace's eyes were already closing. His breathing slowed, his hand slipped from the guitar to the blanket. Camilla reached out, her fingers brushing a stray curl from his forehead. She gently tucked the blanket around his shoulder, her touch lingering longer than it needed to. Her voice was barely a breath. "You have a way of making people feel safe, Jace." She lay down beside them, eyes fixed on the dim ceiling of their little fort, candlelight dancing above. Outside, the rain eased, and the storm moved on. But inside the blanket walls, 3 hearts beat in quiet harmony for the first time, not just safe, but slowly healing. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the clouds, giving the day an almost peaceful hue. Camilla was organizing invoices at the workbench, occasionally glancing out at the garage yard where Toby played with chalk on the concrete. Jace was under the hood of a dusty pickup truck, humming faintly. Every now and then, he'd call out, "You okay out there, bud?" Toby would chirp back, "I'm drawing a tow truck spaceship." Camilla smiled at the child's imagination, but a strange unease lingered in her chest. The days here had been so calm lately, it almost felt unnatural, as if quiet was just a prelude to something else. And then, it happened. A shout from Jace broke the peace. "Toby?" Silence. Camilla dropped the clipboard. Wasn't he just? Jace was already sprinting toward the empty spot where the chalk drawings had been moments ago. "Toby!" No reply, just the wind rustling through the trees beyond the garage. Jace's face went pale. He wouldn't go far. He knows better. But Camilla's gut twisted. Her mind flashed back to shadowy men in dark suits, to the fear that clung to her when she first arrived. "What if they came back?" she whispered. Jace didn't answer. He was already running. They searched the property, yelling his name again and again. No footprints, no broken gate, just a small chalk stick left rolling on the gravel. Camilla's heart raced. Guilt wrapped around her throat. "This is my fault," she said breathlessly. "I brought danger here." "No," Jace snapped, voice breaking. "Don't go there. Not now." Then, in the distance barking, they both turned toward the tree line. Without hesitation, Camilla ran, her flats slipping in the mud. Jace followed close behind. The woods behind the garage were dense. Fallen leaves squelched underfoot. Branches whipped at their arms and faces. "Toby," Jace's voice cracked. A faint sound crying, "Daddy." They followed it through the underbrush, and there he was. Curled up beneath a low pine, Toby sat clutching a shaggy dog's collar, both of them shivering. His small hands trembled. His face was tear-streaked and muddy. "I followed the dog," Toby hiccuped. "He looked lost." Camilla didn't think she tore off her blazer, expensive fabric be damned, and wrapped it tightly around his tiny body. Her arms circled him, holding him close as he sobbed into her shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." Jace reached them seconds later, collapsing to his knees. He pulled both of them into his arms, rain beginning to drizzle through the trees. "I thought I lost everything again." His voice cracked against Toby's damp hair. "I thought." Camilla looked up at him, her own tears mixing with the rain. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. They stayed like that for long moments, 3 hearts beating against the storm, wrapped in panic, relief, and something deeper. Neither of them had dared name yet. When they finally walked back to the house, Toby sleepy in his father's arms, Camilla trailing beside them barefoot and muddy, it wasn't just the boy who'd been found. It was something else too. Something precious, fragile, real. The morning air was heavy with silence. No birds, no engines, not even Toby's usual humming. Just the quiet thud of Camilla's boots as she stepped out of the garage, a packed duffel bag in hand. Jace leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with unreadable eyes. He had not asked questions when she told him her decision the night before. He hadn't needed to. It was written all over her face. "I have to stop hiding," she said now softly. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about doing what's right. Now." Jace nodded once. "You sure you're ready for what comes next?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm sure I can't live like a ghost." Her hand trembled slightly as she zipped up her jacket. The same blazer Toby had once been wrapped in, cleaned, but still stained faintly at the hem from that night in the woods. She wore it like armor now. I have the flash drive, she continued. Everything they covered up: embezzlement, illegal trials, offshore laundering, it's all there. You'll need protection, Jace said. I have a lawyer. And the press is already waiting. Once this goes public, they can't touch me. There was pride in her voice, but also fear. Camilla Hartley, CEO of Hartley Biotech, was about to become a whistleblower against her own board. Jace walked back into the house without a word. For a moment, Camilla thought maybe he was done with goodbyes. But he returned with something small in his hand, a child's handkerchief, sky blue, with uneven stitching along the edge, a crude sun embroidered in one corner. Toby made this for me, he said, after his mom passed. Said I should always have something soft to hold when things get hard. Camilla took it slowly, as though it might fall apart. Her throat tightened. You're giving this to me? I think it's your turn now, he said. You've already earned it. Tears pricked her eyes. She tucked it into her coat pocket with care. Behind them, the screen door creaked open. Toby stood there in his rocket pajamas, holding a peanut butter sandwich, blinking sleepily. Are you leaving? He asked. Camilla crouched down, brushing his hair back gently. Just for a little while, champ. I have to go help fix something important. He nodded solemnly. Like when Daddy fixes big engines? Exactly like that. She pressed a kiss to his forehead, then stood. Her eyes met Jace's one last time. If I get through this, when I get through this, she corrected, smiling faintly. I'd like to come back. Maybe in time for dinner. Jace didn't smile, but his voice was warm and steady. There'll be a plate waiting. She hesitated, stepped closer. Then, without thinking too hard, she leaned in and kissed his cheek, light, soft. The air between them stilled. Goodbye, Jace. He watched her walk down the gravel path, out toward the highway where a black sedan waited, hired by her lawyer. She didn't look back, but Jace did not move from the doorway until long after the car disappeared from view. And inside his coat pocket, her name echoed like a promise not yet broken. Camilla Hartley. It had been 62 days. Jace knew because he had counted each one, silently, as he turned the sign at the front of the garage from closed to open, and again when he flipped it back at dusk. This morning felt like any other, until he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A silver SUV pulled up in front of the garage. Not flashy, just practical. The driver's side door opened, and Camilla stepped out. No designer heels, no power suit, just a soft blue sweater, jeans, and a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair was pulled into a loose ponytail. She looked calm, grounded, whole. Toby saw her first. He dropped his crayon mid-doodle and sprinted toward her like a rocket. You came back, he shouted. I saved your parking spot every day. Daddy told me it's still yours. Camilla bent low, scooping him into her arms, her laughter tangled with tears. I missed my spot, she whispered into his hair. Missed you most of all, Rocket Boy. Jace stepped out slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes met hers, searching, questioning. She met his gaze and nodded. I did it, testified, gave the press the files. The board's cleaning house. I stepped down, walked away from the company. He tilted his head. Walked away from everything? Not everything, she said, reaching into her bag. She handed him a folder neatly labeled in bold type, the Toby Rowan Foundation. For kids who've lost their parents, she said, her voice steady. Grants for vocational training, trade schools, garage apprenticeships, for all the Tobys out there. Jace opened the folder, stunned. You named it after Toby? She smiled softly. He saved me. You both did. Toby tugged on her hand. Does that mean you're staying now? Camilla crouched beside him, brushing hair from his forehead. If your dad says there's still a spot for me. Jace took one step closer. The air between them warmed. You never lost it, he said. Your place, It's still right here. A silence settled, full but unspoken. Then Camilla reached for his hand, rough, oil-stained, and steady as ever. "I want to make this home," she said quietly, "if you'll let me." He nodded once. "I already did." Later, as the sun sank behind the Utah hills, the three of them sat on the back of Jace's old pickup, burgers wrapped in foil, lemonade in mason jars. Toby perched between them, a ketchup smear across his cheek. The sky blazed with orange and gold. Fireflies blinked lazily in the tall grass. Camilla leaned her head on Jace's shoulder. He didn't flinch. She didn't have to whisper anymore. She was home. Sometimes, a whisper in the dark can lead you straight back to the place you were always meant to be, a place where someone's been saving your spot just for you. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that sometimes the smallest kindness can change everything, and that love can begin with just one quiet moment in the rain, then don't forget to like, comment, and most of all, subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales. Here, we share stories that warm the soul, soften the world, and remind us that no one is ever truly alone. Because kindness is never wasted, and love, it always finds its way home.